They came not to conquer, but to reap. Civilizations before ours had vanished without a trace, stripped clean by the same silent predators who now turned their gaze upon Earth. When their ships blotted out the sky, when the harvest began, humanity should have been erased. But in the long night, under the cold light of a ruined moon, we discovered something the harvesters had never known. Humans don't surrender quietly. We fight even when nothing is left. Before I take you into the dark, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss more stories like this one. Now, listen closely. This is the story of the harvest moon. The first day was silence. They did not announce themselves with words. No declarations of war, no ultimatum, just ships, vast crescents of black metal that slipped into orbit as if they had always been there. They eclipsed the sun in fragments, turning noon into twilight. Our satellites went blind. Our weapons fell silent before we could even aim them. I was in Boston when the sky changed. The news had no answers, only live footage. Impossible shapes blotting out the heavens, structures hanging above like tumors in the sky. People poured into the streets, some screaming, some praying, some simply staring upward, as if comprehension itself had failed. Then the lights came down. They weren't beams. They weren't weapons in the way we understood them. They were veils, curtains of white that swept across city blocks, erasing everything they touched. Buildings didn't collapse. They dissolved. Concrete, glass, steel, human bodies. It all broke apart into motes of dust, rising into the air as if the very idea of weight had been abandoned. It wasn't destruction. It was harvest. Within hours, half of Earth's major cities had been stripped bare. The crescents drifted across the continents, feeding. Where once was Tokyo, only blackened streets remained, hollow as a husk. Where once was Johannesburg, there was only silence. The survivors fled underground, scattered, cut off from one another. No armies, no governments. Just scattered enclaves of human beings, trying to hide beneath a sky that no longer belonged to us. I should have died that first night. The veil fell across Boston, a curtain of white swallowing downtown. I was running through a subway tunnel when it hit the streets above. The roar was not sound but pressure, a pulse in the bones. Dust fell from the ceiling as the air thinned. For a moment I thought the earth itself was unraveling. But the veil passed over and left the tunnel intact. We survivors, dozens of us, stared at one another in the dark. No one spoke. No one breathed too loud. Outside, the world was gone. Days blurred. Weeks, perhaps. Time lost meaning underground. We scavenged batteries, water, food from whatever stores remained untouched. But always, always, the light returned. The crescents hovered in their slow orbits, lowering new curtains across new places. We called them the harvesters, and soon we learned that they were not mindless machines. They sent things down. The first time we saw them, they came crawling through the tunnels, silent as shadow. They weren't shaped like anything we had words for. Limbs that bent wrong, faces without features, only hollows that seemed to drink in light. They did not kill us when they found us. They marked us. A shimmer in the air, like heat. And then, within hours, the veil would descend upon that place, erasing everything. We realized then, the harvesters didn't waste effort hunting us directly. They let their scouts find us, and then the harvest itself would follow. I was there the night we lost half our enclave. One of the scouts had crawled into the dark, its body a ripple of oil and bone. We thought we'd killed it, burned it alive with a makeshift flamethrower. But the shimmer still lingered, even as its body cracked apart. Hours later, the ceiling above us glowed white, and the veil poured through, erasing stone like sand. I remember running through collapsing tunnels, the roar of dissolving earth behind me. I remember hands grabbing mine, pulling me forward. I remember emerging into the open night, coughing, blinded, staring at the harvest moon. It wasn't the moon we'd known. One of the crescents had lowered so close to Earth it eclipsed the moon entirely. And from that ship, threads of white light tethered to the lunar surface itself. They weren't just stripping Earth. They were hollowing the moon as well. The veins of dust spiraled upward like rivers into the belly of the ship. That was when I understood. This wasn't conquest. It wasn't even extermination. It was agriculture. We were nothing but another field to reap. And yet, something in me broke that night. Not with despair, but with defiance. The harvesters were efficient. They were relentless. But they weren't gods. I had seen one of their scouts burn. I had watched it die. If something could die, then something could be fought. I wasn't alone in that thought. Weeks later, I found others, ragged enclaves across ruined New England, linked by whispers and desperate signals on scavenged radios. There were pockets of us everywhere, invisible to one another, scattered but alive. And slowly, we began to strike back. The first victory was small. We lured a scout into a trap. An old steel mill wired with explosives. It came sniffing through the dark, hollow face gleaming. We triggered the charges. Fire and shrapnel swallowed it, tearing the hollow apart. For the first time, its body didn't shimmer away. It stayed dead. And for the first time, we cheered. But cheering was dangerous. Because the harvesters noticed. The veils began to sweep more frequently. The crescents lowered further, blotting out the stars. It was as if they had grown impatient, as if the small irritation of humanity's resistance demanded faster cleansing. We kept moving, kept striking, kept dying. Until the night the moon cracked. I will never forget that sight. The harvest moon, tethered to the ship above it, split open with a wound so wide the seas boiled. A plume of dust and rock arced across the sky, a scar of light. The crescents roared, not with sound, but with vibration, a hum in every bone, as if celebrating. That should have been the end of hope. But instead, it became our rallying cry. Because in that chaos, one of their ships faltered. One tether snapped. For the first time, we saw them bleed. The survivors of Boston, of New York, of Montreal, we came together. Not armies, not governments, just people, hunters, doctors, children, old soldiers, humanity in tatters, and we aimed ourselves at that wounded ship. We had no weapons worthy of the name, but we had explosives, we had fuel, we had the tunnels beneath the ruins, and most of all, we had fury. The final night was a blur of fire. We poured every stolen tank of fuel into one cavern, wired every scavenged charge to one trigger, lured the scout swarm into the heart of the ruin. And when the tethered ship descended low enough, feeding greedily on the dust and flesh we offered, we lit the fire. The earth split, the ship trembled, the tether snapped, and in that moment, in the roar of fire and dust and blood, humanity screamed not in despair, but in defiance. The harvest moon itself cracked wider, bleeding light into the void. The ship shuddered, collapsing inward on itself. The swarm faltered, the veil dissolved. And for the first time since the harvest began, the sky above was empty. We didn't win the war. The crescents still hang above, their veils still sweeping across continents. But one of them fell. One of them bled. And somewhere in the silence between stars, the harvesters know this now. Humanity does not go quietly. We are the last light. And even when that light flickers, even when the moon itself cracks open, we burn brighter than anything they've ever tried to reap, and we will keep burning. That was the story of the harvest moon. If it sent chills down your spine, hit the subscribe button for more. And in the comments, tell me this. If you were among the last survivors, hiding in the ruins, would you keep fighting, or would you surrender to the silence? Remember, our stories are the light we carry, and together, we'll keep it burning.